This step is going to show you how to prep your pocket for sewing on the buttonhole. Now, depending on what type of button you have, that might influence the size of the buttonhole that you need to make. So we want one big enough that it'll go through, but not too big that it comes undone easily. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to use this 4-hole buttonhole. We are going to measure 1/8 of an inch onto each side of this button. So I want to center it, and best way to find center is to just take it, fold it in half, putting a dot there marking center. So I'll put my button right on center, and then using my seam gauge, and it doesn't have to be right at the end, because anywhere is going to be marking 1/8. So this is 1/8 extra, and then this is 1/8 extra. Can't really see that other line. Let's change colors. Okay, I can tell where that's at now. All right, so now I know that this is where I'm going to make my buttonhole. It's a horizontal buttonhole, so it'll be going side to side. And again, I want to have it like right in the middle of this part of my pocket between the stitching line and the top edge. Again, we can just fold it to find where middle is. So I'm just going to kind of use that crease as my guide as I'm doing my buttonhole. Now remember, when we make our buttonhole, we have to use a different foot. So I'm just going to turn my machine off because I'm going to be messing with things. There is a little handle on the back of your presser foot. You're just going to swing that back, and this should pretty much just fall off. The new buttonhole foot that we put on, it can't just like fit underneath it, so you kind of have to scoop it onto that stump that's in there. And then once that's on, you can use that lever to kind of lock it back in place. Now, your thread has to go through the middle of the presser foot. So when we're threading your machines, I usually tell you hold on to the top thread and then turn your hand wheel, and that'll bring up the bottom thread. This time we're going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to hold on to the bottom thread. I'm going to turn my hand wheel, make a complete stitch, and it's kind of lost that top thread down in there, but it's gone through my buttonhole foot at this time. So I can still do that tripwire method of getting the thread out without actually having to put your fingers under the needle. So I'll turn my machine back on, and I'm going to push 0. That's going to put it into the buttonhole function. So if you need to draw the line on your fabric of your whole buttonhole of where it's going to go, do that. Make it easier. All right. Make sure that when I'm starting, your thread is towards the back, out of the way. You definitely don't want that thread coming in the front. And away we go. Your machine is going to go down the left side of the buttonhole. And then when I get to the bottom, the end of my marking, I'm going to push the reverse button just once. I don't even have to hold it. And that tells my machine to go back up to the top. It'll do a bar tack there. And then it'll start going down the right side of your buttonhole. Now it remembers how long the first side was. So when it gets to the bottom, it's going to stop it for you. It'll do a bar tack at the bottom, and it slows down and it stops. My foot pedal is actually all the way down, but it knows that it completed a buttonhole. So at that point, again, trim your threads on the top and the back. And then carefully, you are going to cut open that buttonhole. Do not cut through any of the stitches that we have on the ends, because then it causes your fabric to fray. You can use a seam ripper to kind of stab it in there. If it's a little bit of a longer buttonhole, it's easier to fold it in half and then just make a slight little slit in that buttonhole that then you can just put your scissor tip in and cut the rest of it. Be very, very careful. You are not cutting through any stitches. All right, your buttonhole is done. Bring it up to be graded.